Welcome to Rose Red Homestead, and thank you so much for joining us today for a pretty important video, actually, and this one goes directly to food security. It is very important, and it's questions that have been raised recently. First, we want you to know how much we appreciate our community. We are getting more and more subscribers, more of you are tuning in, and what that means for us is that the word about safe canning, safe preparation, emergency preparedness, and self-reliance, the word is getting out, and we're so grateful for all of those of you who share the videos, who like them, to help get that word out. It's really exciting for us to feel like we're maybe making a little bit of difference. Over the past little while, maybe the past year, we have had a couple of questions, several questions, mostly from people from Europe saying, we don't have access to pressure canning, and we've not ever pressure canned, we've always water bath canned. Here in the United States, since 1917, the USDA has been telling us that pressure canning is needed to kill botulism spores. That's the way I grew up, but for my whole canning career, that's what I have always been taught and always practiced, is to get the canning food into that kill zone in order to kill botulism, and we do that by following the USDA prescribed processes. So as I was doing a ton of research in preparation for using my gadget to test those canners, I learned some really interesting things about botulism and about water bath canning. And so the bottom line is it safe to can low acid foods using water bath? All right, now, if you are in the United States, sit down before I give you the answer. Are you ready? Are you sitting? Because the bottom line answer is yes, it can be safe. Even though that is not the way we have been taught, we are very fortunate in this country to have the USDA, who has tested and published the most efficient and most safe ways for us to get into that kill zone for food that we have to pressure can. Now, I'm going to illustrate how a person could do if they chose to, which I do not recommend. So, this egg can represent the botulism that might be in a jar of low acid food. Now, if I follow the USDA recommendations, it takes a certain amount of time, generally about 75 minutes for pints, 90 minutes for quarts on a lot of foods to get me there. And the botulism is killed. Now let's let this egg represent dead botulism. And so I'm going to open it up, and you will notice that it is completely hard-boiled. Hard-boiled. And that means, in this little illustration, death to botulism. All right, now, what if I don't have access to a pressure canner? And I'm living in a country where those things are not available, but any pot filled with water can be used for water bath canning. So how can I use water bath canning to get to the point where botulism is killed? All right, so I have set up right here 6 eggs. I used the sous vide button on my Instant Pot Max. Sous vide holds water in the inner pot at a constant temperature. So you can slow cook foods that are like sealed in a plastic bag. You can drop them down in that water. The water's a constant temperature, and then you can cook it that way. The water was 170 degrees. Now, to get this egg hard-boiled, the recommended time for hard-boiled eggs is between 7-8 minutes. Where we live, which is higher elevation, water boils at a lower temperature. We can only get our water up to 203 and not 212 because of our elevation. It takes 10 minutes. That's the recommended time to get an egg hard boiled, 10 minutes. So in that sous vide water, I took one egg out at 10 minutes, one at 20 minutes, one at 30, 40, 50, and 60. So now what we are going to do is open those up and see if that amount of time at a lower temperature, it's only 170, it's not boiling water. So it is below the recommended temperature. So here is the egg that stayed in 170 degree water for 10 minutes. We're going to open it and let's take a look. Oh, a mess. So that botulism certainly is not dead, and I'm just going to shove the whole thing into this bowl. Here is our egg that was in the 170 degree water for 20 minutes. Twice the suggested time at a lower temperature. Well, a little bit better, but still not done. Botulism is not dead. This egg was in that 170 degree water for 30 minutes. Oh, it's getting better, but botulism still isn't dead, still gushy. All right, so I left this one in for 40 minutes. Surely this must give me enough time. Hard-boiled is what we're after. No, still not. Nope. It doesn't, you can compare and see. It just doesn't have that right color to it. What about 50 minutes? Oh, it's getting better, but if you can see, it's still not all the way hard-boiled in the center. All right, what about for a whole hour? Maybe we'll get lucky, and this whole hour at 170 will have hard-boiled this egg, killed the botulism. Oh, we're almost there, just not quite. Well, by this point in time, I thought, good grief, I could go through dozens of eggs trying to get there. So I just jumped ahead, and I kept one in for 2 hours, 120 minutes, to see if I could finally get to a hard-boiled egg. Hooray, there it is. There is a hard-boiled egg. And it compares to this one. So we have the gold standard finally reached there at 120 minutes with lower temperature, but you know what? It only took 10 minutes right here. And so this was a 10-minute egg, this was a 2-hour egg to produce the very same result. And that is exactly what happens with water bath. Now, I have the algorithm that the entire food industry uses in order to make sure that the food gets to the high enough temperature to kill botulism spores. So I could plug in any data that I want to, even made up data, to figure out how many hours it would take that we would have to water bath things in order to make them safe. All right, for those at sea level, it is at least 6 hours of boiling time. Now, if you are doing green beans, do you want green beans that have been boiled for 6 hours? Now, that is at sea level, anything under about 1,000 feet. By the time you get up to our elevation at 5,000 feet, it takes 18 hours for us to get to that point. Now, pay attention to what I'm about to say because this is critically important. Just because my algorithm, the one that's used in the food industry, says 6 hours or 18 hours, that doesn't mean that is a tested and valid number. That's just running it through the numbers. When I was in my PhD program, I took a class in remote sensing, and we were looking We looked at satellite pictures of certain areas, and based on the colors, we were, as the students, supposed to identify what the vegetation was on the ground. We studied all kinds of things about colors and refractions and reflections and blah, so that we could look at those remote sensing photographs and identify what the vegetation was on the ground. And we did our very best. And in spite of our very best, none of us could never get better than 80% accuracy. And the reason was because you don't. You have to actually what is called ground truth vegetation. Somebody needs to be on the ground walking the same territory that was pictured in those remote satellite pictures in order to verify what it actually was. And the same thing is true with the numbers that I just quoted to you. Even though 6 hours, 18 hours is what the algorithm uses, that does not mean it has been laboratory tested with real organisms in the food to determine whether or not those are the accurate numbers. So, in Europe and other countries, the water bath canning times have been passed down in families. Maybe in certain regions there are suggested times, but there, to my knowledge, has not been the rigorous testing that the USDA has given us. So, 10 minutes versus 120 minutes. Pressure canning, according to proper rules and regulations and cooking times, or by the seat of your pants, guessing and not being sure that you have had it in the water bath long enough to kill the botulism. For me, it is a no-brainer. I would never, ever use water bath to can anything that is low acid. So I hope this has helped illustrate a concept that you can now speak more knowledgeably about when on other channels someone says, oh yes, you can water bath, and you can come back and say, that may be true, but you have to water bath for hours and hours and hours and hours, and there is no standardized time for these foods. So you're still taking your life in your hands when you do that. For those of you that might be interested in looking at that algorithm that I've spoken about in this video, it is a log 12 reduction algorithm, and I have actually posted the algorithm. It is under the description of our video on testing the Presto Digital Canner. So you can play with that algorithm and kind of get an idea about what it does. To really make it accurate, you need to know what the temperature is on the inside of the food inside a jar, which is why I use my, my gadget. And then you need to know the duration of how long it stayed at that temperature. So other than that, go for it and have a lot of fun with it. Thanks for being with us, and we will see you at our next video.